All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Business Entrepreneurs and Private Practice Student Special Interest Group, or the BEPP SSIG. It's a mouthful, I know. However, it encompasses all that we do and cover. So I feel like it's necessary, and gosh darn it, the name's going to stick. So deal with it. Yeah, we have a very special guest today talking about a very cool topic that I'm personally invested in. So we have with us today Dr. Kay Mastrocola to talk a little bit about neurodivergence in business. So, Doc, take it away. Introduce yourself. Let us know what you're up to, and let's get rolling.
Hey, thanks, Scott, for that awesome introduction. So yeah, my name is Dr. Kay Mastrocola. I am just about to hit my 1-year mark, working in private practice pelvic health. And I work for a small business out in Chicago, and I'm a full-time pelvic health therapist. But on the side, I am a meme maker and a sticker maker and a jokester, and I love how I can turn my mind into these kind of creative elements and actually capitalize on them. And I think a huge part of my success has actually been my neurodivergence. And so being diagnosed with anxiety, depression, and ADHD, these kinds of traits that I have, are actually not so much a superpower, but just kind of like a added bonus, right, to the pile of like ways that I'm able to unlock parts of my brain that others might not have thought about, and capitalize on them.
Yeah, I mean, again, for those of you that don't know my story, I'm recently diagnosed ADHD. I had a lot of struggles throughout undergrad, grad school, and then my EDD. But I kind of always just thought it was like that entrepreneurial mind. Like I just can't shut it off. I'm always thinking of ideas, and being an English major, I thought it was like, I'm just creative. So it is what it is. I feel like you, it's helped me in business more than it's hurt me, I think. But now in hindsight, being recently diagnosed, I see what was going on, and I can now connect the dots and put it together why I struggled so much. And so it's been an interesting journey for me. I think, my story, I'm able to now help people, I hope, and you've been very open and vulnerable with your story, and I appreciate that as well. But I think you kind of have a common goal and an interest in helping people that are going through the same stuff that you and I have been through, because it is different for everybody. It's a different experience, but I have strategies and techniques that I implement or have implemented to get to as successful as I have at this point before even being diagnosed. So now that I'm diagnosed and I'm able to work with medications and stuff, it has been much, much better. I have to admit, it is thoroughly good. But that being said, tell us a little bit about, how you see ADHD and neurodivergence kind of aiding and assisting you in the business world.
Yeah, I love that question because ADHD gives me a different way in which I view the world. So everything to me is a bigger puzzle to be figured out. And I think a lot of this, we can I had a friend and she majored in anthropology, and she studied human behavior, and her master's thesis was on ADHD. The H stands for hunters. And so when you look evolutionarily at your hunters and your gatherers in society, your hunters are the people who had heightened senses. They were actually more mobile. So like for me, I'm double jointed. And so they were able to go through those tight spaces. These hunters had this ability to like work nonstop on the grind for like 4 hours straight, but then they needed that amount of rest to just pick back up. Whereas your gatherers can kind of work at more of a slow community pace and kind of work together and kind of like feed off of each other and be able to spread out through that 8-hour day. And so her argument is that ADHD and neurodivergence is not actually a diagnosis, it's just our genetics, right? And society itself has actually put barriers to allow the gatherers to succeed because that's the society we live in. And when you look at the people like Zuckerberg and all of those like high-end people, they're gatherers. They're not hunters. They gather people around them. They gathered people to build their ideas. Whereas my neurodivergence, I am always hungry. I am always searching for the next thing, and I will latch onto it for 3, 4, 5 hours without even realizing, going to what we call time blindness. And as an entrepreneur, this is both a blessing and a curse. So it's kind of learning how to manage and know when is the right time to use these ideas, and how do you put them away in a voice note, and have the motivation to go back and follow your brain to hunt on the same prey, right?
Yeah, I love that. That's a really good take on it. A little bit outside the box, which I love. Um, Let me ask you this. Did you ever think you would start your own business? And tell us a little bit about how it all got started.
I absolutely did not think I would start my own business. And if you did, I would think it'd be a private PT practice. And I'd say no, because that sounds like a lot of work and I get tired.
Yeah.
And I get tired because I latch onto ideas for 4 hours and then burn it out. And so how did it even start? It's so hard to, it's like, where are you asking from? So my meme page, I'm the creator of DPTs with Anxiety on Instagram, and it is a meme page that covers all of the anxious moments from classroom to clinic. So we're looking at those moments that are funny, vulnerable, true, that just make you laugh. And like, it's like, oh, I see myself in that. And the more I started posting, the more I started realizing, oh, people really like this. They want to showcase this. And I was like, okay, what can we use to continue to showcase this narrative? And I have an emotional support water bottle and I carry that thing with me everywhere. And it is covered in stickers. And I love stickers, because they're just a fun way to kind of like express little bits of you. And as a creative, as someone who's always doodling, drawing, creating, I was like, what better way if I just tinker around, and the worst thing that happens, nobody buys these stickers. And then the stickers blew up and I made over $1,000 in sales in my first month with my stickers. And it kind of became a narrative piece for people to ease into the conversation of I'm not alone. And one of my best-selling stickers is not really PT related at all. It is, but it isn't. So some of them are more on the anxiety field, some of them are more on the PT field. But it's a little guy, he's a nervous system, and he has a banner around him that says, all of my systems are nervous systems. And it's funny because it's like, oh yeah, like I feel that. We've all felt it, and we all like, if that's how you live in your life, and I live under the mantra of like, hey, if you can laugh about this, then you've healed from it. If these people are laughing with me, they are healing. And the stickers are just a small way to showcase all of our collective success.
Yeah, I love that. And again, I think it's important to highlight the fact that your business is PT adjacent. Definitely a lot of PT content, a lot of PT swag on there, but not patient care.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, patient care was never going to be the end all be all answer. It just wasn't. Because much like you, I go on like a micro ultra focus into, certain rabbit holes and things, and mentally it kind of tires me out. And so I can get so ultra fixated on a diagnosis or a treatment or a progression or things that I'm thinking about, that by the end of the day, especially if I'm educating a lot, which I felt like when I was in clinic, I if I left the clinic and I still had a voice, I didn't do my job right. I didn't educate enough on that day, and this ultra fixation with things, really, I was being spent physically in the clinic treating patients and doing things in an outpatient type clinic, but also mentally in the thought process and letting my mind just go, 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 go constantly. So that was kind of, tough for me. And I knew that, especially in some of the clinics where it was like a quote unquote mill clinic where you're seeing 25, 30 patients a day, that wasn't going to fly for me. There was just no way, because A, I felt like it was crappy care, but B, the documentation and keeping up with that, there's no way there, especially again, this was pre-medication for me. So no chance, it just wasn't going to be a success thing for me. So do I still treat? Yeah, I still have my mobile cash pay practice, but again, I treat few and far in between at this point because it just doesn't make sense from a time and financial standpoint. But that's a whole nother story for a whole nother time. I still think it's important to use the skills that we have, especially as physical therapists, and get our hands on patients and work on communication and stuff. I think that's super important. But just realizing there are other avenues out there for physical therapists to still have an impact and really, make a difference in people's lives without being one-to-one on patient care. So I applaud you for all that and what you're doing. Um, Tell us a little bit about some techniques that maybe you use in business and entrepreneurship that have kind of helped keep you motivated, or on the straight and narrow, or focused, or getting stuff done, essentially.
Yeah. So I always try and honor my brain. And I think that that's a very taboo kind of thing to talk about. Like a little bit, people like, oh, like I can't honor my brain because I can't keep my brain on a schedule. And I think that that's fair, right? We all work differently, and that's what makes us so powerful when we all kind of talk together. But for me, I know I physically cannot do the things I need to do if my brain's not in that state that it needs to be done in. And so when you look at a business standpoint, it's like, how do you do that when you have 1,000 micro tasks and you have ADHD? Well, ADHD is not inattentiveness. It's not, oh, squirrel, look at that. And like, I'm now whisked away for 9 hours. Like, this is something I love. This is something I care about. So this is the thing that I'm spending 4 or 5 hours on creating and sharing. So it's the thing that like my brain honors that is important. It's the stuff on the back end that are like, okay, make sure your finances are in order. Make sure that this, like that printing company you use, like you use that. So like when tax season comes around, you can roll it in. And finding shortcuts to that almost. So like looking on Etsy and finding like pre-made financial templates to where you're like, I budgeted this. And then it's like, I did the math. And because like, I don't math. And it gives you like a full visual spreadsheet, right? Finding those tricks that I used and I set aside and I disciplined. I'm just like, hey, on the 31st every month and the last day every month, that's finance day. I have to schedule myself. And I have to kind of use my tricks that I can to get my brain going. And for me, I know I need to use those sparingly or they start to become not as motivating anymore. They don't spark the same dopamine, right? So if I continue to force and use my like dopamine stimulation too much, it flatlines. So I have to be careful when I use those things and I save them for those bigger moments for me to latch on, hanker down, hyperfixate for 3 hours and get it done. Right. If I try to micro and pull from it, I'll miss things. I'll miss details. So I need to spark that dopamine when I need to, put it on the schedule. And then that is the only time that I'm using that technique that sparks that dopamine. And for me, it's normally going to a coffee shop where I have a busy environment. So my brain is like, oh, everything else is busy. It's okay. We can just focus on what we're doing because I can see everything's busy. I don't need to make my own busy. And then it's the Disney parks, just music. It just makes me happy. It helps my brain just mellow. And that is my latch on. I got to do this. Let's get it done. And I have a coffee, which is always great. So it's a treat.
Yeah, you and I have some similarities and some differences for sure. I will say I do like the background noise, even going back to undergrad. I just, one of my roommates from college who I lived with for 3 out of the 4 years is absolutely has to be sick of the double live Counting Crows album, because I would put that on in the background all day, every day while I was doing stuff, just to have some music that made me happy in the background that I could tune out to focus on my work. So that's definitely something that I still use to this day. I like background noise. I like a little bit of music in the background so I can literally zone it out. It's weird, but that worked for me. So I like that kind of busy background noise or chatter, right? You said something interesting too about honoring your brain and just going with it when it hits you, like when it strikes. I couldn't do that. I have times that I carve out for my creativity and work, and it's been okay. Maybe I have missed some lightning in a bottle type stuff, but I keep a little pad, like a moleskin pad in my upper pocket usually to jot down some ideas, and then I leave them and I come back to them. I let them stew for a while. Now we have iPhones, so it's easy to just put a little something in the notes and come back to it. I personally like seeing my own handwriting. I think that's why I keep the little pad as well. But one of the things that you said that I kind of do that's in line with that is I have to time block, right? I have to have every hour of my day allotted to what the task is. It has to have a name to it. And I just plow through them like a list. What I have started doing, though, I realized that was too rigid and I couldn't always get everything done. Then I'd like spiral out of control at the end. From 3 to 5 each day, I usually give myself grace if you will. And that's where I kind of allow my, brain to do its thing. I use that last 2 hours for catching up, for fixing anything that didn't get done in the time I had allotted, or just creativity. If I did everything and everything worked and I have free time, all right, let's write, or let's, come up with an idea, or like, let's check something off our to-do list for the business, and so that's where I've kind of, basically come up with my day-to-day task list, but then also given myself some time for, honoring my brain, if you will. And then the third thing that I use personally, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I have to have a neat and organized desk and workspace. And that is one I am still working on to this day. I think you and I might have talked about this. I'm a piles guy. Like when I did my dissertation, I had all of my research articles in folders in piles, and I knew exactly where every article was in its pile. And my wife hates piles with a passion, fiery passion. So at one point, she cleaned up all of my stuff and put it all in one pile and put it on my desk to like clean it and get it out of the way of the living room, which is where I was doing late night work. And it was probably the worst day of my life.
I know that feeling.
Yeah.
I know that feeling so well. Oh my God, it's painful.
In my mind, I knew exactly where everything was and how I had it organized. And that all went right out the window when she put them all in one pile. I understood where she was coming from. Like it was a mess, but I was in crunch time for dissertation, man. I was like focused. I was like, I know where this is. I got to get it done. And so it was like, for me, it was like writing up a whole document and then getting the blue screen of death and losing everything, because I was just like, shoot, I don't know where anything is. I mean, and I made it worse than it was. I made it like literally, this is the end of the world. But I got through somehow. I figured it out, and I passed, and I got, finished my dissertation and graduated. And now they can't take it away from me. So, it is what it is.
And I want to use that to kind of highlight something that I found is so just beautiful in my life is my interabled relationship. So I've been partnered with my partner Rick for almost 7 years now, and I have ADHD and he has autism. And like when you think about like the spectrum, man, and we're both medicine. So I'm physical therapy, he's in med school, about to be emergency medicine. And it is this hysterical didactic between us. And it is the perfect ebb to my flow, like the yin to my yang. And it only just highlights like how important neurodiversity is in business, because if all of our brains are working the same way, you are going to miss things, right? Because you are all on the same track and you're all looking out the right side of the window, you're going to miss the mountains on the left side because you're staring at the dumpster fire on the right. Right. And so with him, like he's always got those like little just like details for me, like, and he's just such a vessel that like, sometimes I'll just turn on my notes app when we're just chatting or my voice app, and I'll just record our conversations because most of the time it's just me gabbing. But there's those nuggets in there, right? And he's like, oh, but did you think about this? And it's just like, just this, because I'm so far up in the clouds with my ADHD. And he's just like, yeah, I see you in the clouds. Let's just like move like down like one layer of atmosphere and like make this attainable. And he's just been such the biggest supporter of all of this. He's like, go be crazy, go be anxious, go be funny. And I'm just going to sit back and be like, yes, my fiance is the meme queen. And he's this force that is just like, he has his organized structures, but he doesn't like pick up mine and like try and move them to fit his. He just kind of lets it go with the flow, whereas I make the flow move with me. So we kind of like ebb and flow against each other. And I think if I didn't have him as this kind of polar opposite, like neurodivergent force, like things would get missed. Like I wouldn't know that like $600 is like of profit is what you have to do to file taxes. And he's like, hey, you should get like an EIN. And I was like, oh, what's that? And he's like, oh, it's this thing. And I'm like, oh my God, like that's such a great detail. I'm glad I have you. And so, finding those partners, like, and again, like it doesn't have to be this labeled title thing, but like challenge yourself to find partners in business, find people you practice with who both share your ideas and can hype you up, like Scott does to me, and also kind of like pull you back and be like, I hear you. That's really cool. See it from the left side of the window. See the same view from the other side of the window. And it's not challenging, right? You're both going the same direction. It's just different views. And I think that that's really important, is to surround yourself with those people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, my wife, super supportive of my ridiculousness, and she has now started her own business. She has a decorative sugar cookie business, and I'm trying to support that. She likes the creativity and the hands-on. I'm more like business and technical behind the scenes. So like it works out pretty well. And now I know if I want to keep my piles nice and neat and organized, I need to keep them the hell out of the living room. So I get it. We're cool now. Now we know we're on the same page, but she's very supportive, and likewise of me, of her. So I think it does work well, but definitely if you were to go into a partnership in business, which I don't necessarily recommend, sometimes it works, but definitely starting off, I think you really should go at it for your own for a little while. But if you do look to bring on partners or work together with somebody, I do recommend finding somebody who is different than you and has different points of view and a different, yin to your yang, because you don't want to be in that echo chamber, first off, like you said. And then beyond that, it's like, if you're all the strengths are the same, then you're going to have a glaring weakness in there. So like find people that like to do the things you don't do and vice versa. And that's a pretty good match if you're looking for partnerships and stuff. So,
And don't find the yes man. Don't
yeah,
find the person who's going to yes you to death. Like, think
no,
of it in the realm of physical therapy. If your patient's doing an exercise wrong, and you see that and you're like, well, this isn't really damaging, but it's not correct. And you just, they're like, am I doing this right? Yeah. Never gonna get better.
yeah. Yeah,
Same thing.
no, absolutely. I've got one more question for you, and then we'll open it up to the floor and let people poke and prod at your brain a little bit and see what's up. But what have you enjoyed overall most about, running a business and learning about business and growing and scaling your business?
I love watching people use my words to emphasize their feelings. I think that it's very, very scary. And what I do is, what I focus on is mental health. And that can be very dark, and that can be very scary, and that can be very taboo to talk about. And I think I kind of spin it in this lighter phrase, right? And it's just enough to spark a conversation. And in that, people find themselves and then can express themselves through something I have created. And that is the most humbling part of having a business, is having people support your business. To talk about like ego boost, like, I like this so much, I'm going to put my money to it. Something that I like traded time for. And I think that this is worth the 4 hours I worked to buy a sweatshirt that has a brain on it. Like, always rep your own merch, like be your own biggest fan, side note. But to humbling beyond belief, rewarding beyond belief. And I know that that's more of like a media kind of business, but when people are enjoying what you're putting out and wanting to pay attention and spend their time, how much more can you thank them for that?
Yeah, I mean, it shows that somebody believes in you and your message enough that, like you said, they're going to trade their hard-earned money to support you. Right. And of course, they get something out of it too. There's a transaction there. They end up with something tangible at the end. But like, people generally don't buy the product or the course or whatever it is. They buy you, right? They buy into you. They're buying into the brand, and nowadays I feel like brand and reputation are pretty much hand in hand now. They're the same thing. Your reputation is what people say about you when you're not there, right? Well, same thing with your brand. Like, if you're not a great person, then chances are your brand's going to suffer, because people talk about you and word spreads, and they're like, I wouldn't buy from that guy, he's not that great.
Look
And
at
it's like,
Yeezys.
yeah, a lot of money involved in that failure. Yeah, I mean, it just, it to me, it really becomes a matter of like having a good product for sure, but really believing in it enough. And again, it's sometimes it's making that first dollar or two online or through your business, or even in a brick and mortar, where you see that people do believe you enough. They do buy into your message and what you're trying to accomplish. And so that support helps, kind of grow and steamroll the momentum, because, yeah, people are into what I'm selling, they're into it, like they get it, and so I think that that's a huge takeaway, really. It's just, realize that if people are willing to, it's that like will it fly test, right? Like Pat Flynn from Smart Passive Income has a book about that. Like, I have this idea, I'm not sure if it'll work, but once you make that first sale, you're like, oh, okay, proof of concept, it will work, right? And then the more and more you do it, the better you refine it, you keep getting a better product. And then eventually, again, people just kind of like you and what you're doing, what you're all about, and the problem that you're solving, and they're on board, and it just kind of grows and spreads from there. So yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't we open up to some questions? Now's your chance, folks. Ask away, whatever you'd like.
Hi, Kay Mastrocola. I'm Ian. I have a quick question. When you first started your Instagram page, I see that you started 2021. How did you kind of scale your visibility on Instagram with your page?
Vulnerability. So I had no goal starting my page. My page started as a therapy project for my therapist, because I was really struggling in transitioning from student to physical therapist, and that the idea of that jump terrified me. And so she was like, how are you coping now? And I was like, oh, I make memes. And she's like, send me them. And then she was like, you should post these. And it wasn't supposed to be as big as it is now. It's still actually very weird to me that it is. And I love it. But how I kind of grew is that I started becoming honest, and I actually found that I grew the most when I started showing my face and sharing myself. I started still in PT school, and I noticed that like some of people in my PT school started following me, and I was like, no, like no one needs to know that I'm this like anxious, like they already know. They don't need to know that like I am now like on the internet promoting like being anxious. And so like I covered my face in early stories and things like that. And once I graduated, I was like, F it, who cares? And started being more open and vulnerable. And that's what people started sharing and commenting and liking and sharing with their friends. And I was like, oh my God, people, it was, it's that funny. I mean, it was Agatha all along. Like, no, it was Kay all along. They weren't in it for the memes. They were in it for what I put into the memes. And staying as authentic as you can, people are going to see that and want that and follow that. And hashtags help like just to get you on like certain pages and niches. So I have certain hashtags that I like always copy and paste down on a couple of my posts.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, being yourself, I guess is the best answer.
Yeah, people want to connect. They want to have commonalities with other human beings. So being authentic and just being real and being you. I mean, again, I'm an open book. Most of you guys know my story at this point. I share it all because, I mean, I've got nothing to lose at this point. My story is what it is. Hopefully it helps people, I don't know.
Yeah, I had a business friend who I was talking with, and I was launching some merch at the same time of another like big name in like the PT Instagram world. And she looked at it and she goes, yeah, this is nice, but like people follow her because they want to be her. People follow you because they are you. And they're like, one of those is going to burn out really quickly because people are going to realize what they can and can't achieve. You can only buy yourself to be somebody for so long. And I was like, all right, like speaking proverbs, like over coffee and croissants.
Yeah.
That's very true.
Who else has got some questions?
I had a question real quick. I just kind of wanted to know what's like, I guess like your next steps for scaling your merch and like your business right now. Kind of where are you at with that?
I'm very excited to share this. I was so it's not like public on my pages yet. I still have a couple things to tie up, wrap up. But I have been invited to be a podcast host on the PT Pinecast network. So I will be hosting my own podcast dedicated to talking about how to find thriving, how to, it's the Thrive Guide, embracing the awkward in pursuit of success. So there is survival, there are survival guides, and there is I am successful. it is real awkward and ugly in between. So I'm going to dive deep into my own stories, my own anxiety archives. I'm going to ask very successful people their anxious moments. I want to create a vulnerable space, and I want to make people uncomfortable. It's also why I love pelvic floor PT. Your growth happens when you are vulnerable. And I'm very, very excited. That's where my brain is going. I'm expanding my voice on this platform, and I'm beyond humbled to have been recognized as someone who has a platform and has a voice that is seen to even like open this kind of opportunity. So that's kind of my next steps.
Yeah, Jimmy McKay is a phenomenal business mind, obviously big promoter, big into communications, started in the radio world, went in PT, now kind of back in the radio world. PT Pinecast is probably the podcast in all of physical therapy. So the fact that he's kind of starting a network and trying to grow the voice of PTs and give them a platform, I love it. I love it. That's going to be so good.
Cucumber.
Well, I mean, think about it. It makes sense, right? If we're looking for real life stories and people to relate to, like who better than you, right? I mean, you're the best, I mean, it's like you are so just real and authentic, and you've got a track record to show it. So, yeah.
Appreciate that.
And let's see.
Yeah, extremely relatable.
I have a question. So you were saying that, you said that, if someone had asked you when you were in school, if you wanted to go into private practice and you're like, no, like what may I ask, what made you go into private practice and to start your own own venture?
Sorry, quick caveat. I don't have my own private practice. I work for a private practice.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I actually sought that out because PT mills anger me and the system anger me. And like, I know a lot, and I see a lot of pelvic floor PTs get stuck in that cylinder block in the back and just kind of like become this millhouse to Medicare. And it just wasn't the vulnerable population that I was looking. It wasn't a space where I felt I could grow in. So I sought a private practice that had more mentorship opportunities.
What did you look for in a private practice when you were looking? So somewhere you could kind of develop your own sense of what did you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So really, I was looking for a place that already had pelvic floor PT established, because I had 10 weeks of clinical experience in pelvic floor and 1 class under my belt. I knew that wasn't enough for the patients I wanted to treat. I needed more. So I looked at private practices that either had specialized in pelvic floor. So I'm very blessed that I am in Chicago. It's huge here. It's not like, middle Nebraska. And so I basically Googled like pelvic floor PT Chicago, and all these places popped up, filtered them out and filtered. So, and what really drew me to my place was actually the website. The website gave me so much breadth about who the people I wanted to work for were. Their mission statement was clear, who they worked for, who they served, for women, serving women, what they accepted. So I think having that like in your face, again, that vulnerability of like, this is who I am, take it or leave it, in a very like pretty package, was what I looked for. And then in the nitty gritty, I wanted, as a new grad, I wanted a place that offered mentorship opportunities and at least contributed to my continuing education, because pelvic floor PT is so expensive.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we talked about on one of the much earlier guest lectures with Ben Fung was perks, right? Perks and benefits. You don't think about that a lot of time when you're taking a job offer. You're like, all right, what's the salary? Okay, great.
Yeah.
Vacation. Okay, cool. Benefits. Yeah, I got them. All right, great. And that's kind of where most people kind of stop. You got to dig a little deeper. You got to really ask the questions like, hey, are you going to cover my APTA dues? Hey, what's the continuing education budget like? Hey, what kind of mentorship plan do you have? And because a lot of places, especially mill clinics, say, oh yeah, we have mentorship. And then you get there and they don't. Right. So like you need these kind of things to kind of dig a little deeper on the benefits and really, some of the things, your license, right? Renewal of your license. Do you cover that? You know, just all these little things that you kind of don't think about. It's good to have this stuff prepped and ready, because an interview is a two-way street. It's not just them asking you questions. You need to be going back and asking them questions too. So those are great things to kind of look for. And I think, you know, you kind of circling back to neurodivergence here. When I see big picture and I can see the website and like the design and like that hits more home to me. I need to see the big picture. I need to see the visual and the 30,000 foot view and the Venn diagrams. You know, it's just that's what resonates with me. But that's just my way of thinking and learning. So I totally get it.
And in full, like, to just to emphasize that point, in full transparency and vulnerability, my current salary is $73,000. And I turned down a position that was $85,000 a year because they did not have a structured mentorship program and they did not cover my continuing education. And as a new grad, my education and mentorship, I can get there. I can get there when because, you know, my boyfriend being in med school, we might move and things like that. And I was like, I can't get back these early years. And like, something that really stuck with me, that what my bosses said when they hired me is like, we were really looking for somebody with 3 to 5 years of experience, but we see that you have such passion. We can teach anybody pelvic floor PT. We can't teach passion. So like, when you are like opening your own clinic and like looking to hire people, if that's the route you want to go in, making them feel valued is huge, because those are the things that as an employee stick with me every day when I go to work. It's like, oh, they hired me with purpose, not just to see more patients. And that's really special.
Absolutely. And hire with like higher attitude and work ethic and like being a good human being, because you can train the skills. You can train how to be a better physical therapist, the techniques that you want to use, the hands-on, all that can be trained. Being a good person and a good human being, and like, you know, having a good team style attitude and coming to be a lifelong learner, that stuff's a little harder to teach sometimes. So if they have that already, that's who I'd rather hire. And then another point that you bring up, taking the hit on the revenue there and like taking a lower salary. Like you said, you're getting it back kind of a little bit with CEU, you know, money for sure. Mentorship, without a doubt, if you're just getting started and that's something you're seeking out. Yeah, these early years matter, but you can always make up the difference in starting a side business or a side hustle or a side gig. Like, you know, if that's really your goal, is to make that 85, or let's say you need to get to 100, right, for student loan purposes and keeping a roof over your head and doing all that, and you're only going to make 75, and you love that place that pays 75, you should go to that place for sure. If you love it and you're going to get a lot from it, go to that place. Then reverse engineer how to make up that 25. You can do it with PRN weekend work. It sucks. I wouldn't recommend it because you're still working for someone. You're still having to learn a new EMR, still doing 3, 4, 5 evals a weekend. Not fun. The pay's great, but yeah, you're still making someone else rich. You might as well start your own thing and do the math on how many hours a week you would have to work or patients you would have to see at a cash pay rate to make up that 25K for the year. I'll give you a hint. It's not that much. It's really not. Couple of evenings, couple of weekends, and you're going to make up that 25K.
And here's the biggest thing I think I've learned in this whole process. And this really came at like being invited to speak at CSM with like some amazing disabled physical therapists, is that my whole page, and the reason it's created and it is what it is because like I didn't see the representation that I wanted. So I became it. I became it kind of accidentally.
So big.
But fine, if you're like, man, like I'm not a creative, I'm not, you know, like I just spent $10 on a digital download of a spreadsheet to where I can just type in things and it auto blocks it. And that person is probably making hundreds of dollars a day on this instant download. You know, if you are studying and you are finding what you're studying is so interesting, and you have a system for your notes that you think someone else's brain is going to click to, please like post that for people, because people don't want to work hard, especially when they don't have time in PT school. Like find what you're good at, find the things that you had to create because you weren't represented somewhere else, because there's 100 other people who are looking for that and are not ready to put theirs out there.
Yeah, that's such a huge takeaway there. You just hit so many things on so many levels. One, if it doesn't exist, the hell with it. Just create it, become it. That's easy. Like if you want to be the expert physical therapist who only treats, astronauts, great. Doesn't exist yet? Well, there's only a couple places to go. Start poking around NASA, start poking around other space programs, see what's available, see what they have to offer, see if you could bring them value, right? Do all the research you can around physical therapy and rehab and astronauts, right? And then what they have to go through when they come back, right? Write a book on it, right? Do whatever you got to do to become the person you want to be, right? That's not a problem. If it doesn't exist yet, yeah. Now, granted, there's only X amount of astronauts in the world, so you better be charging a ton of for your services to make up for that expertise, right? Otherwise, you're going to run out of people real quick. But again, maybe you become now an advisor or a consultant to those space programs. And if now Elon's trying to shoot a bunch more people up to Mars, they're going to need somebody to be the expert. And oh, look at that. You wrote the book on it. You treat patients or, rehab astronauts. You consulted with other space programs. Now you're immediately the expert in that thing, right? Just become it. Will it into existence. I mean, I'm not trying to be all frou-frou here and like hippy dippy, but it really, if this is something you're truly passionate about, just start and just keep going and don't stop,
If it scares you, good.
Yeah, absolutely. Side note, I did the math real quick because I don't math either. $25K, if you charge $200 a visit, which is what I charge for my cash pay patients, that's 2.4 visits per week. 2.4 visits. That's literally Saturday morning from 8 to 11. So if you're only open one day a week and you see 3 patients, you make up the $25,000 difference. I promise you can see more than 3 patients a week. I did it from scratch, not knowing anything about cash pay or how to do it. So it can be done. I promise. It's super simple. Do what you love, find the place you love, find the place that's the best fit, and then make up the difference. Reverse engineer how to make up the difference. And it may not be patient care, right? It may be holding camps for soccer players or something, right? It may be, doing speaking engagements. It may, it may be an online business, who knows? But figure out a way to make up the difference because like you said, those early years are very informative, especially when you're right out, and just starting to practice. Learn what you can. Don't be afraid to start your own business right out of graduation. Aaron LeBauer is a perfect example of that. He graduated from, I believe, Elon's DPT program, started his own cash pay practice right out of the gate. It can be done. The models are out there. People are doing it left and right. Don't be afraid. What else we got? Who's got some more questions for us?
And if not, my DMs are always open. Like, feel free to slide in. Like, I check them. I love talking to you guys. So it's very fun for me, like when you guys engage with me in my page. So if you're like, I don't know, like shoot your shot.
Anything else? Any other questions for Kay before we let her go enjoy time with the significant other, the pup, and dinner? Would be nice to eat tonight. All right. Any takeaways? Any last final parting words you want to give to the crew? Any words of encouragement?
I will leave you with my favorite phrase that was told to me in PT school, and what will be the catchphrase of my podcast is that you can be the entire package and sent to the wrong address. So if you feel like you are not in a space that you belong in, and sometimes it's clinical, sometimes you just have to keep your head down and get through it, right? But you are a box of cat food that just got sent to a house with 4 dogs. Wait your turn, right? Find where you need to go, find that address. Okay, whole package, wrong address.
Awesome. The Instagram address is in the chat.
Okay.
It's CPTs_with_anxiety. Check her out, Dr. Kay Mastrocola. Thank you so much for coming on and kind of showing us every inside and outside of business world and neurodivergence. It's been absolute pleasure chatting with you, and we look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thank you so much. Bye, guys.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we will see all you guys next week on the business meeting. So have a good one.